The name is at the top right of the screen. In the beginning of the story, tears were flowing as everyone mourned the passing of the grandmother. The young boy, with tears in his eyes, asked if his grandmother was going to heaven. His mother, trying to hold back her emotions, assured him that his grandmother would be going to a good place to rest. Seeking reassurance, the boy questioned if it was really true. His mother confirmed, telling him that the grandmother would be watching over him and the entire family, ensuring they lived happily. Curious, the boy inquired about the goodness of that place and whether it had a lot of delicious food. His mother responded positively, saying that it indeed had everything the grandmother liked. As she became emotional, she patted the boy and suggested that they should send the grandmother off with a smile. The young maid screamed, calling out for the grandmother to wake up, in a sleepy state. The grandmother wondered who was seeking out this old lady so desperately, pondering if it might be her granddaughter Cheyenne. The maid, frustrated, questioned why the child was always sleeping in, reminding her that she had told her about the Viscount's return that day. The grandmother, groggy waking up, realized it wasn't Cheyenne after all. The maid, visibly frustrated, exclaimed that she was finally awake, noting that she slept like a horse. Confused, the grandmother questioned the unfamiliar term, Grana, as the maid tossed the maid's uniform towards her. She urged her to wake up, get dressed, and start working. Puzzled, the grandmother wondered why she was being asked to work, questioning her own mortality. The maid, growing impatient, asked why she was staring mindlessly, informing her that the Viscount was bringing a guest and that there shouldn't be a speck of dust on the stairs, instructing her to clean it up. The grandmother hesitated, fearing that sudden movement would hurt her joints, but then she realized she felt completely energetic, as if she had a new body. She observed her chubby, young, and pale hands. Feeling puzzled by the sudden transformation, the maid shouted at her to start working quickly. Grandma, now reincarnated and frustrated, pondered the child's behavior. She mentioned changing clothes and, with a broom and bucket of water in hand, contemplated which stairs needed cleaning. She thought about asking the snappy girl but decided against it, criticizing the state of the house and resolving to show off her cleaning skills. Grandma, declaring her expertise in cleaning, decided to begin by removing the carpet. After cleaning the stairs, she felt satisfied with her work and decided to tackle more tasks. Once finished, Grandma sat down, feeling nervous and confused. She had been so focused on cleaning that she hadn't stopped to think about her situation. She wondered where she was, who the child was, and if she had become a child. Pinching herself, she felt pain, confirming the reality of her situation. Despite her uncertainty, she was determined to figure things out. Reflecting on her 89 years of life, Viscount Winston welcomed him modestly, stating that his home was nothing compared to Viscount Fried's. The Viscountess admired the house, commenting that it seemed like he had fixed it up and it looked very nice and clean. Friedrich agreed, praising Viscount Winston for his humility. However, Winston thought to himself with irony that just because the house was clean didn't make it nice. He considered it a 100-year-old house that he and the maids had given up on. Friedrich complimented the chandelier, noting its new appearance and the glorious gleam it cast. Winston, surprised, wondered if he had entered a different house. The butler welcomed him home, and Winston, with a sigh, questioned if this was truly his house. He whispered to the butler, asking what had happened. The butler informed him that one of the new maids was very skilled. Winston was taken aback when he inquired about the new maid, only to be informed by the butler that a 15-year-old orphan had recently joined the household with exceptional cleaning skills. Winston smiled with satisfaction, grateful that she had saved him from embarrassment. He decided to reward her, and instructed the butler to bring her to his office once the guests had departed. The butler agreed to Winston's request. Grandma entered and asked what's wrong. She stood herself, then politely states if she may know why she was called. Despite her old age, she silently commended herself for her quick wit. The butler apologized to Winston for the maid's lack of manners. Winston attributed it to her orphan background from the commoner class. The butler offered to have the head maid educate her on proper etiquette, but Winston dismissed the idea, choosing instead to reward her for her exceptional cleaning skills and overlook her minor mistakes. Hami, as she was called, overheard their conversation and contemplated the terms commoner, orphan, and housekeeper, reflecting on her new identity and circumstances. Uncertain about her situation, she came to terms with the fact that she seemed to have acquired a new body after death, one belonging to a commoner orphan working as a maid. She questioned why fate had chosen this particular role for her, but acknowledged that any young and energetic body was preferable to her frail 89-year-old self. When Viscount Winston asked if she was indeed Hami, she confirmed her identity. He then generously offered to reward her with anything she desired for her excellent cleaning work. Hami humbly requested some fabric, colorful thread, and a sewing box, only to be met with total silence, leaving her puzzled and wondering if her modest wish was too extravagant for the grand estate of the Viscount. Viscount Winston was taken aback by Hami's simple request for fabric and thread, assured him that the fabric and thread would be sufficient. In a hushed tone, Winston commented that she seemed too young to fully grasp the value of things and decided to give her a raise. The butler acknowledged the instruction discreetly. Winston then informed Hami that he would instruct the maid to provide her with the requested fabric and thread. Hami expressed her gratitude with a respectful bow. Reflecting on her own abilities, she acknowledged that while cleaning was a special skill of hers, she excelled even more at sewing, stitching, and knitting. She pondered her innate talent for needlework, a craft she had always been drawn to and quickly mastered with just a needle and thread in hand. She felt confident in her ability to create clothing, believing that there was nothing she couldn't sew or knit. Alone in her room, Hami appreciated the promptness with which the Viscount fulfilled her request. She observed that the curtains and table placements in the house's interior were dull and mismatched. Suddenly, all the maids gathered around Hami, bombarding her with questions. They were curious about what the Viscount had said to her, and what she had received as a reward. They found it hard to believe that she had only asked for fabric and thread, wondering if there was something else she desired. One maid expressed that if she were in Hami's place, she would have asked for some pretty lace. Another chimed in, suggesting a head covering or hat, something that ladies wear. Yet another maid wished for gloves adorned with ribbons to beautify her hands, which she didn't find very attractive. Hami reflected on the youth of the maids, noting that they were at a wonderful age of only 17 or 18. One of the maids was taken aback by surprise and called the others to look at something. Upon seeing Hami's knitting, she exclaimed in admiration, acknowledging Hami's talent. Hami modestly explained that she found the curtains and placements on the dining table unpleasant, and had decided to change them, showcasing her skill and initiative. The maid responded with a single word: "Amazing," expressing her astonishment at Hami's handiwork. Suddenly, Josephine entered the room frustrated and demanded to know who was making noise at that late hour. The other maids panicked, recognizing Josephine, and hurried to their beds, leaving the room in silence. Josephine then turned to Hami, questioning why she wasn't in bed yet, reminding her that the lights would be out soon. Hami, puzzled, asked why they had to go to bed while it was still early. Josephine, taken aback, accused Hami of talking back to her just because she had received a compliment from the Viscount. Hami, annoyed by Josephine's attitude, thought to herself about how Josephine was spitting everywhere while speaking. Josephine accused Hami of being more ambitious than she appeared, loudly claiming that Hami had never learned to clean properly, and had been pretending all along. She suggested that Hami had waited for an opportune moment to showcase her skills when the Viscount had guests. Hami internally noted Josephine's loud voice at that moment. The head housemaid entered, demanding to know the cause of the commotion and questioning Josephine's presence there. Josephine felt a wave of nervousness as the head housemaid addressed her. The head housemaid instructed her to return to her room immediately, to which Josephine quickly complied. Once Josephine had left, the head housemaid expressed her bewilderment at Josephine's behavior and reassured Hami not to take her words to heart, promising to handle the situation later. She advised Hami that it would be wise to go to bed since the maids were allotted very little candle oil. Hami nodded, indicating her understanding of the head housemaid's advice. Hami lay on her bed, her eyes blinking in the moonlight. She thought to herself that the moon was bright enough for her to sew. With that, she began her knitting, working through the night. The next morning, the butler was surprised to find that the curtains and placemats had been changed, all handcrafted by Hami. The butler reflected on the curtains, marveling at the needlework and noting that it was like a picture. The butler, surprised, inquired if Hami had done the needlework. Hami proudly confessed that indeed she had, explaining that she was feeling frustrated and decided to change things up a bit. However, realizing her informal tone, she quickly corrected herself, clarifying that she thought she would change the curtains, addressing the butler respectfully as "My lord." The butler wondered aloud if all of the curtains in the large house had been replaced with handmade ones in a single night. Casually mentioned that she also made some placemats for the dining table, although she was uncertain if they would be to his liking. The butler, taken aback, repeated the word placemats in disbelief. Upon glancing at the placemats, he asked in astonishment if Hami had made them. Hami downplayed her work, saying there was no need for such surprise, and chuckled. Hami presented her fellow maids with her handmade gifts. The maids, surprised, questioned if they could really keep something so exquisite. Hami responded that she had made them because the maids had expressed a desire for such items, insisting it was no big deal. The maids expressed their astonishment and joy. Hami was questioned about whether she truly made everything by herself, and how she managed to do it. The admirers praised the beauty of her work, suggesting that it was even prettier than what one could purchase. They speculated that not even the noble class possessed such items. Hami assured them that it wasn't difficult, and that anyone with fabric and thread could create these things. One maid in disbelief sought confirmation, and Hami affirmed, wishing she had a sewing kit designed for making laces. The maids, excited by the prospect, wondered if they too could learn to make such items. One even offered half of her pay for the month for lessons in a group. They showed their eagerness to learn, which made Hami feel happy, though she playfully asked them to let go, joking that they were squeezing her too tightly. The maids eagerly asked Hami if she would really teach them, expressing their excitement and making plans for what they wanted to create, like ribbons and fancy dress. Hami, taking a more stern approach, reminded them that beginners should start with something simple. Despite a maid's protest, Hami insisted on learning the basics first, such as the running stitch, back stitch, and buttonhole stitch. She told them she would start teaching them the following day and asked everyone to bring their sewing boxes. That marked the beginning of the beginner-level sewing classes. Hami demonstrated the basics of sewing, sparking interest among the staff. A few days later, more maids expressed their desire to join the lessons, and as word spread, even more maids, including those with experience, considered joining. Hearing about the popularity of Hami's classes, Cassian Winston, the young master of the Cassian household, was perplexed and displeased upon discovering that his quilt was adorned with images of grass, contrasting with the dragon on his father's quilt and the Gerber flower on his older sister's. He demanded that the quilt be exchanged immediately. The maid attempted to point out that the quilt had its own unique qualities. But Cassian insisted that he didn't like it, and decided it would be better to have the maid who made it come to his room to talk about it. Cassian insisted that he would give her instructions on how to make a new one because he was worried she might make one that he didn't like. The maid tried to say something, but Cassian was determined and said it was best for him to oversee the process himself. He urged the maid to come to him. As the maid thought about the situation, she realized with frustration that she would be the one getting scolded. Despite her tears, she firmly told Cassian that he had to attend his lesson for at least a few minutes today. Cassian agreed and said he would just give his instructions and then send her back. He asked the maid not to look at him so tearfully. Seeking reassurance, the maid implored him to keep his promise. Cassian acknowledged this, and the maid reluctantly said she would go get her. Cassian thought it would be a great opportunity to shorten his class time and decided not to send her back too quickly. He also saw it as a chance to meet the maid who was the subject of rumors. Meanwhile, he wondered what he should ask her to make. Cassian's maid approached Hami and exclaimed that the young master was asking for her. Startled, Hami questioned if it was really the young master calling for her. The maid urged her to hurry and promised to explain on the way. She reminded Hami to bring fabric, thread, and other necessary items. Hami asked about the reason for the summons, and the maid explained that the young master probably didn't like the pattern on his quilt and wanted to discuss it with her directly. She then warned Hami that although it wasn't typical for a maid to speak so, the young master was notoriously difficult to please. She advised Hami to agree and comply with any of his requests to avoid trouble. Hami, puzzled by the mention of trouble, asked for further explanation from the maid. The maid explained that young Master Cassian was known for being stubborn and mischievous. They reminded her that Cassian had changed after his nanny's death from a terrible illness 2 years ago. Reflecting on this, she felt a pang of sorrow, realizing that non-biological caretakers could hold a special place in one's heart, similar to that of real mothers. She shared that the young master had been relying on his Manny since losing the Viscountess. She revealed that the Viscount had tried to hire new nannies, but the young master had found ways to dismiss them due to his challenging temperament, causing many to leave. The maid warned her to be mindful of this and to complete her task swiftly, as Professor Blake would arrive soon for the young master's lesson. The maid warned her never mention the Viscountess in the young master's presence. The maid knocked on Cajuin's room door, and upon his invitation to enter, she instructed her to proceed while she prepared for Professor Blake's arrival. Feeling nervous, she entered Cajuin's room, and as she laid eyes on him, Hami couldn't help but feel an unexpected connection. Cassian was surprised by her appearance, noting her short black hair, small face, and delicate features. Despite her youthful look, she seemed to possess a mature aura. He invited her to sit and asked if she could create a new pattern for his quilt. He desired something that balanced luxury with simplicity, a design that was noble and unique, yet understated enough not to draw too much attention. Aware of Cajuin's impending lessons, she thought it best to finish her task quickly and leave before they began. SHR was puzzled by Cajuin's vague instructions about the size of the quilt. As Cassian approached out of curiosity, he poked at the knitting that Hami was working on. She reprimanded him, reminding him not to touch the fabric while she was sewing. Cassian, taken aback by her reaction, felt a sense of nostalgia as if he were seeing his nanny again, who would have cautioned him in a similar manner for his safety. Cassian remarked dismissively that a needle prick wouldn't be fatal. Hami, adopting an elderly woman's tone, warned him that tetanus was not to be taken lightly as there was no cure. Cajuin's memories of his nanny echoed in his mind, reminding him not to underestimate burns and the lasting scars they could leave. After a while, Hami presented her work, asking which pattern he preferred. Cassian pointed out his choice, prompting Hami to comment on his liking for tiger patterns. Surprised by her informal tone, Cassian questioned why she was speaking to him so casually. Hami, taken aback, realized she had been using casual language with him. Cassian, with a playful smirk, teased that he might allow Hami to use informal speech but only if she met a certain condition. This intrigued Hami, who cautiously asked what the condition might be, ensuring she addressed him respectfully as sir to acknowledge the difference in their social standings. As the knocking persisted, Cassian expressed his annoyance, presuming it was Professor Blake. Hami, realizing the urgency, made a move to leave. However, Cassian insisted that their business wasn't concluded and commanded her to sit down, despite Hami's reminder about his upcoming lesson. Cassian was firm in his directive for her to sit. Professor Blake praised Julie for her efforts and indicated that he would take over from there. Upon entering Cajuin's room and noticing Hami, he apologized for the unexpected company. Cassian questioned Blake's manners, pointing out the irony in his teacher's lack of respect. Blake justified his entrance as a necessity for starting their lesson. Cassian expressed his dissatisfaction with the idea of being taught by someone who didn't respect his privacy. Hami unexpectedly scolded Cassian for his attitude towards his teacher, leaving both Cassian and Blake shocked by her boldness. Hami emphasized the importance of education and urged Cassian to study diligently for the sake of his parents' future. After delivering her stern message, Hami left, leaving Cassian and Blake bewildered. As Cassian lay in bed, his mind filled with thoughts of Hami. He couldn't believe her audacity to slap his hand and scold him in front of his teacher, all because she was skilled at sewing. Despite his noble status, he felt challenged by a maid who dared to speak informally to him. Glancing at the quilt she had made, he had to admit that she had done an excellent job, or else he would have insisted on changes. As he lay there, he couldn't help but think about her beauty, which even he found strikingly evident. He wondered why he hadn't noticed her before and resolved to stay focused, not letting her looks sway him. The next morning, Cassian stealthily hid among the shrubbery in the garden. The gardener, surprised to see him, expressed his astonishment. Cassian promptly shushed him, demanding silence. The gardener, taken aback, respectfully asked about Cassian's unusual presence in the garden. Cassian, with a mischievous tone, declared that he was on a quest to catch bugs, preferably the larger ones. Cassian, with a chuckle, quietly sought out Hami and presented her with a package, claiming it was a gift. Hami, surprised, questioned if the gift was truly meant for her. Cassian urged her to open it, and as she did, she discovered caterpillars inside. Cassian, in an attempt to mock her, exaggeratedly praised the caterpillar's health and energy, mimicking her earlier tone. Hami was taken aback by the unexpected present. Hami gently patted Cassian on the head, praising him for his thoughtful gift. Cassian was taken aback and could only respond with a confused, "What?" Hami pretended to be happy but expressed concern for the caterpillars trapped in the small pocket. Cassian was shocked as Hami, in a motherly manner, patted his behind and suggested releasing the caterpillars in the garden. She assured him that she would be fine stitching patterns alone. Cassian, carrying the caterpillars outside, was bewildered by the whole interaction. Since then, Cassian continued to play tricks on Hami, attempting to make fun of her with various pranks. However, each time, Hami responded with cleverness and practicality. Cassian grew increasingly frustrated with his failed attempts, while the other maids were buzzing with talk about Hami's marveling ways and how she never got scolded for her casual way of speaking with the young master. Seeking her company, Cassian suggested that Hami leave her duties to another maid and join him for a walk in the garden. But Hami declined. Winston, noticing the commotion, inquired about it, and the butler shared the rumor that the young master seemed unable to charm Hami. Winston observed with a smile that it appeared Cassian had found himself a good friend. Reflecting on Cassian's past, felt a pang of sadness that he had grown up without the love of a mother or nanny. It was through these circumstances that she became Cassian's friend and accountability buddy. As the seasons changed, Hami found herself comfortably settling into her new life. On the other hand, Cassian expressed his boredom with his studies, particularly his disdain for having to read the Chronicles of the Kingdom once again. Hami, always wise, reminded him that reading is a pathway to success. Cassian, skeptical, dismissed the idea, confident in his ability to thrive without it. Hami questioned his resolve and asked if he truly intended to neglect his reading. Cassian confirmed his decision with a simple, "Yes." Hami then shared that one of her lifelong dreams was to be able to read a book. Cassian responded by calling it a pitiful dream, but Hami didn't see it that way. She confessed that she couldn't read at all. Cassian was taken aback, assuming she was capable of anything, only to discover that she didn't know how to read a single letter. This revelation left Cassian pondering the contrast between her many skills and her inability to read. Cassian reassured Hami that her inability to read was understandable, given her background. He told her not to worry about it, and admired her for her many other talents. Reflecting on his own complaints about reading, he realized it was insensitive to complain in front of someone who couldn't read, much like a noble complaining in front of a commoner. With a change of heart, Cassian offered to teach Hami how to read. Surprised, Hami hesitated but eventually sat down beside him, albeit timidly, ready to learn. Hami reflected on her life, acknowledging that as a commoner, she obviously couldn't read. She lived her life to the fullest, yet even in her previous life, she remained illiterate. Illiteracy was a source of sadness for her. She had attempted to learn to read at an adult school, but as her eyesight deteriorated, she eventually gave up. Her wishes were simple: her family's happiness and health, and the ability to read. She always desired to read and write without depending on others, something she never believed she would be able to do. Hami observed Cassian writing on paper and pondered that the writings resembled a bunch of seaweed. Cassian instructed her to memorize all the letters, saying them out loud for her to copy. Although Hami couldn't speak, Cassian urged her to repeat after him. Hami complied, saying the letter with a smirk. Cassian praised her and continued with the next letters. Hami repeated each letter, and he introduced other letters to which Hami responded. Hami's eyes gleamed with joy as she reflected on the new knowledge she had gained at her age. Cassian continued to teach her the alphabet, and she eagerly repeated the letters. Encouraging her to memorize them, Cassian witnessed Hami's excitement and exclaimed, "Oh, I see!" As the evening approached, a gentle knock on the door indicated that dinner was ready. Surprised by how quickly time had passed, Hami suggested they take a break from their lesson. Although Cassian preferred the comfort of his room and considered requesting the meal to be brought upstairs, Hami's strong belief in the importance of family meals convinced him otherwise. With a resigned sigh, he agreed to join his family for dinner. As Cassian made his way out of the room, Hami's voice filled with gratitude caused him to pause. She earnestly thanked him, and although Cassian initially dismissed the significance of his actions, Hami's evident joy made it clear that it meant a great deal to her. Reflecting on Hami's reaction, Cassian wondered why she was so grateful for something as simple as teaching her letters. Now, he felt compelled to teach her more. He contemplated which book would be easy for her to read and debated whether to look for children's books he used to enjoy. Meanwhile, in the basement where the maids' quarters were located, a conversation ensued. One maid exclaimed about saying hi to Colin, while another maid remarked on seeing her tying his shoelaces. They discussed the closeness of their relationship, acknowledging that feelings often developed among the maids and manservants. However, dating among employees was strictly prohibited by the butler. Despite concerns about being overheard, one maid reassured the others that it was unlikely anyone would come down to the basement. They mentioned Colin's previous involvement with Josephine, but it seemed she was no longer interested in him. The maids then discussed Josephine's excitement during her day off in town. Apparently, she had encountered some thugs in an alleyway, and someone had come to her rescue. It was like a scene from a romantic play, although Josephine had only seen the man's back as he quickly disappeared. They described him as having black hair, broad shoulders, and muscular arms, admiring his fine clothes and speculating about his appearance. One of them mentioned a preference for blondes with blue eyes. They expressed optimism that Hami would end up with someone amazing. The maids agreed that if she were a man, she would have proposed to Hami already. One maid dismissed the idea of young Master Cassian showing interest in her, calling it a fantasy. However, both maids were shocked and then burst into laughter at the thought of Cassian liking Hami. They declared that she was too good for him and vowed to prevent him from coming near her, even if he begged for her hand in marriage. Hami observed her lively maids with fondness, thinking about how nice it was to see them in high spirits. However, she had been preoccupied with memorizing letters and missed their conversation. The maids mentioned young Master Cassian's attractiveness and noble lineage, but also hinted at his challenging personality. They suggested that only someone like Hami would be able to handle him. Just then, there was a knock on the door, causing everyone to shiver. Hami peeked out and asked who it was. The voice outside responded that there was a grumpy fortune teller who needed something to eat. Another maid mentioned that the housekeeper was busy. Hami felt nervous at the mention of a fortune teller and reflected on the situation, wondering why she was being asked to feed a grumpy fortune teller and send them off. The maids discussed the fortune teller's audacity to come to a viscount's house. One maid acknowledged his pitiful appearance and suggested that seeking food might be his only option. They implied that Hami might not be aware of the rumors since she was always with young Master Cassian. The house was abuzz with gossip about the fortune teller who claimed the future empress resided in every noble house he visited. They're criticizing his obvious motives, suggesting that he only wants something in return for his flattery. Despite once being respected, his behavior has led to him being treated like a troublemaker. Hami thinks about the situation and decides to simply give the fortune teller some food and send him away. The maids express their frustration, believing that fake fortune tellers tarnish the reputation of genuine ones. They lament the existence of people like him and advise Hami to be cautious and not believe anything he says, as he's likely a con artist. Hami agrees with them and understands the cautionary advice. Hami approaches Chef Vayton, who warmly greets her. He offers her some cookies and asks if she needs anything. Hami reflects on Chef Vogan, acknowledging that young Master Cassian often tires him out. She realizes that he likes her presence because Cassian complains less when she's around. Chef Vaughn enthusiastically offers Hami some custard cream to go with the special muffins he made. He generously provides plenty for her to share with everyone and encourages her to come back any time for more tasty treats, emphasizing the importance of eating well for good health. Hami gratefully accepts and asks for some bread and milk as well, to which Chef happily agrees. Hami then requests some cheese and ham, and Chef agrees to get it for her. Chef packs a lot of food for Hami, commenting that it looks like she's off to a picnic, and offers her some fruits as well. Hami clarifies that it's not for a picnic, but for the fortune teller. She expresses excitement and gratitude, feeling all set. However, she wonders if she got too much food for the fortune teller. Hami approaches the fortune teller with the food in hand. She expresses concern about the layers he's wearing and offers him some milk. He thanks her and starts eating while Hami sits nearby. He comments on how delicious the food is and appreciates the kindness of both the food and the people. Hami reminds him that there's plenty of food left and advises him to eat slowly. He promises her that he will. Hami dismisses the fortune teller's gratitude and pats his back, reassuring him that he's just trying to make a living and encouraging him to stay positive. However, she's taken aback when he addresses her as Haimani and offers her some food. Confused, she wonders if she hurt him, but he insists she should eat too and calls her Haimani again, causing Hami to ponder what he meant. The fortune teller then reveals that he's not just an ordinary person, but rather a sorcerer. Hami is shocked by the revelation. The fortune teller, in a good mood, shares a secret with Hami, claiming that the future empress lives in her house. Hami, skeptical, mentions that he says the same thing everywhere he goes. He explains that he didn't know where she lived and had been going from door to door. Now he's certain that this is the right house. He reassures her that he doesn't intend to interfere with the future. Hami becomes puzzled by his words. The fortune teller assures her that he won't tell anyone about her and dismisses her situation as unimportant. He explains that cases like hers only occur once every few hundred years. Hami becomes nervous, reflecting on his words and wondering if he's referring to her inhabiting the body of a child. The fortune teller reassures her that it's not unusual and advises her to live as she pleases since it won't affect her future or destiny. Hami is left contemplating his cryptic words. Hami wonders if there truly are no consequences to how she lives her life. She questions the fate of the child whose body she now inhabits. The fortune teller explains that Hami and the child are actually the same soul that somehow separated into different lives and have now reunited. He assures her that she is the original owner of her current body and can live however she chooses. Hami absorbs this revelation, contemplating its implications as the fortune teller reaffirms the truth of their situation. Hami reflects on the concept of sharing the same soul but wonders why she doesn't have any memories. As the fortune teller, Hami, asks if she remembers her childhood or what she did when she was 15, she admits that she doesn't remember, attributing it to possibly getting too old. The fortune teller explains that her child self is only 15 years old, so it's natural that she can't recall anything. Hami questions why she can't remember anything despite this explanation. The fortune teller explains that Hami's soul was much larger than the child's soul, which is why she can't remember anything. He reassures her that she'll eventually get used to her new self and suggests thinking of it as regaining her youth. Hami is surprised by the idea of regaining her youth. The fortune teller elaborates that as her body gets younger, her mind does too. He then abruptly ends the conversation, saying he's talked too much and needs to leave before getting caught. He advises Hami to contact him at the castle if she has any more questions and hurries off. Hami questions the fortune teller's cryptic warning about getting caught by a scared person and ponders how she could see him again without knowing his name or what he looks like. She also wonders about the castle he mentioned. However, she brushes off these thoughts, realizing that what's important is that she can live the rest of her days as she pleases. Hami smiles, feeling happy at the thought that it's fine to do just that. Hami reads aloud from the book, stumbling over the word. Responded. Cassian helps her out, saying it's responded. Hami continues reading, expressing confusion at the abrupt ending of the sentence. Cassian encourages her to keep reading, assuring her that it gets better. Hami questions if that's really the case, but then realizes that the story likely depicts the tale of Luke, the small mouse, surviving inside the cat's belly for 7 days. Cassian reflects on Hami's progress and is surprised by how quickly she's memorized most of the letters. Meanwhile, Hami continues reading from the book, describing how Luke, the small mouse, scratched the liver of the cat and vowed to escape within a week. Cassian reflects on Hami's reading ability, noting how well she reads despite her small lips. He also observes her usual maid outfit, which he finds especially striking today. However, Hami interrupts him, asking for help with a word. Cassian is startled but assists her with the word destroy. Hami continues reading, expressing her confusion about the story's strange plot. Cassian agrees and suggests they stop reading it. Hami selects another book titled The Peach and Apple Are Enemies, and remarks on its unusual title for a children's book. Cassian asks if she wants to continue reading, to which Hami enthusiastically agrees. She begins reading the book aloud, describing the peach's declaration of vengeance against the apple. However, the apple remains unfazed by the peach's threat and taunts it about its inability to win in the past. Hami continues to narrate the escalating tension between the two fruits. Cassian blushes as he watches Hami, his thoughts fixating on her pinkish cheeks, feeling shy. He suggests they stop reading at that point. Hami is puzzled by his sudden change in demeanor. Cassian reflects on his own behavior, finding it strange. He quickly comes up with an excuse, mentioning Professor Blake's imminent arrival and suggesting they continue reading next time. However, he wonders why he keeps thinking about Hami. Hami, surprised by Cassian's sudden commitment to class, can't help but wonder if he actually intends to go on time. Hami emphasizes the importance of academics to Cassian, who agrees. She wonders if the hot weather is affecting him as he abruptly opens the door for her to leave. Just then, Professor Blake enters, addressing Cassian. Cassian inquires if there's still time until the lesson starts. However, Professor Blake reminds him that they agreed to start the lesson an hour earlier today, indicating that he didn't listen to the previous week's announcement. Professor Blake expresses doubts about the rumors circulating in the Winston household, then acknowledges Hami with a greeting. Hami responds politely with a bow, Cassian feeling uneasy questions why Blake is greeting her. Blake brushes it off, mentioning that the rumors seem to be true. Hami inquires about the rumors, prompting Blake to fabricate one about Cassian teaching her to read and write. Blake privately wonders if he should mention the rumor about Hami having full control over Cassian but decides against it. Professor Blake expresses concern to Cassian, questioning his ability to teach others due to his supposed lack of interest in academics. He doubts Cassian's capability, stating that teaching is more challenging than learning. Cassian is taken aback by Blake's remarks, sensing some underlying criticism. Blake quickly backtracks, claiming it's just his personal opinion. However, he subtly implies that Cassian lacks the necessary knowledge to teach by mentioning the importance of basic subjects like the history of the founding of the empire. Professor Blake surprises Hami by suggesting that she take lessons with young Master Cassian. Cassian reacts with shock, clearly taken aback by the proposal. Professor Blake whispers to Hami, expressing his belief that young Master Cassian will be more attentive during a lesson if she joins. Hami smiles, feeling somewhat compelled by Blake's request, though she wonders about the underlying reasons. She nods in agreement, indicating her willingness to participate. Blake then leads them to begin the lesson, starting the famed history of the Empire on page 302. Hami follows along, curious about what the lesson will entail. Hami urges Cassian to sit quickly, as the lesson is about to begin. Cassian, confused by the sudden change, observes Hami eagerly anticipating the lesson. This frustrates him as he wonders what's happening and why he's feeling this way. He wants to leave but hesitates because he doesn't want to. Cassian is the only one who worries about Professor Blake's popularity. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, thinking it couldn't possibly be true. Professor Blake notices that Cassian is more attentive during the lesson thanks to Hami's presence. He then asked Cassian a question about the first law enacted in the Empire, to which Cassian confidently responds with digesta. Professor Blake confirms that Cassian's answer is correct. Meanwhile, Hami reflects on Cassian's improved focus during the lesson, realizing that perhaps to gain something, one must lose something else. She finds the situation not too bad after all. Hami reflects on the inevitabilities of life, the relentless march of time, the certainty of death, and the oppressive summer heat. Meanwhile, two maids chat with each other about the palace's rumored magic tool that can ward off the heat, expressing their desire to use it themselves. Hami acknowledges the existence of magic in the world, realizing that what the fortune teller said about it seems to be true. She compares this belief in magic to her past life, where smartphones and the internet felt like magical tools for communication and entertainment. However, she remains focused on the immediate problem of dealing with the summer heat, feeling restless and unwilling to simply accept the situation. Hami excitedly approaches Chef with the idea of making pea-min punch. Chef is initially puzzled by the concept, and explains that it's a drink made by boiling ginger and cinnamon together, then adding honey and sugar. Chef is intrigued by the idea of a cooling drink and agrees to make it. Hami eagerly awaits as Chef gathers the necessary ingredients to prepare the pea-min punch. Chef presents the cinnamon and ginger to Hami, confirming if they are the ingredients she mentioned. Hami nods enthusiastically, though she expresses a wish for dried plums and pine nuts, which they don't have. Chef reassures Hami, expressing confidence in her ability to make what she wants. He offers his support. After boiling all the ingredients together for an hour, Hami excitedly announces that the pea-min punch is ready. Chef apologizes for falling asleep while waiting, but Hami reassures him, saying there's no need to apologize, and offers him some of the punch. Chef hesitates at first but decides to try it. As he takes a sip, he is pleasantly surprised by the taste. He compares it to coffee but notes the difference in presentation, being served in a bowl instead of a cup. As he continues to sip, he is transported by the flavor, feeling like he's in a cool forest. He appreciates the balanced sweetness and rich flavor, expressing his amazement at never having tasted anything like it before. Hami eagerly asks Chef how the pea-min punch tastes. Chef struggles to find the right words at first, but then enthusiastically declares it delicious. He praises Hami's skill in making it, knowing that despite its simplicity and the use of basic ingredients, the drink turned out great. Chef pats Hami's back, expressing his desire to serve it with dinner as soon as possible. He predicts that the Viscount will love it, and may even reward Hami for her culinary creation. Hami modestly brushes off Chef's praise, expressing her happiness that he enjoys the punch. She informs him that it is poured into glass bottles so they can store it in a cool place to enjoy later. Chef agrees with the plan. Hami then suggests giving some of the punch to the kids who work in the household if Chef encounters them. Chef agrees, noting that the kids may be feeling demotivated due to the heat but will surely appreciate the refreshing beverage. Chef fills the bottles cautiously as Hami reassures him, saying there's no need to make a big deal out of it as she can always make more. She then suggests making siki, a sweet rice drink, instead. Chef is shocked by the idea, wondering what siki is from that day forward. The next day practically everyone in the mansion has tried the drink. The Viscount even thanked Hami for the drink. The maids ponder about how Hami knew about such a drink. Meanwhile, the professor brought Hami a book in exchange for the drink she gave him last time. It's a book she enjoyed reading and he hopes she enjoys it too. It's a book he enjoyed reading, while at the academy, she tells him he didn't have to. But he explains it's his sincerity, so she doesn't have to feel pressured. It's a textbook about martial arts. She smiles politely and exclaims she didn't give him anything great to deserve it. He tells her she's really great, and she's a much better person described in the rumors. Hami tells him she's just happy to see him enjoying it. They both compliment each other, saying that the young master is lucky to have them by his side. Cassian feels at this rate flowers will start blooming, and there will be a jungle of flowers. He then wonders if Hami likes handsome and smart men. He thinks that Hami may like Professor Blake, but in the professor's eyes, he must only be a little kid. Then this can only be unrequited love.